My God, this is bad. This. It gets worse. By the way, it gets worse. Let's just pull this off right here. Let's pull this off right now. Ready for it? Oh my Jesus. Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears and the load ship of lowered loads. We are here with my Prelude in a very special edition of the Try Hard series. Now, if you're not familiar with Try Hard, it began as a photo that I posted on the internet that drew the fire and fury of the internet experts. All the internet audiophiles came out of the woodwork to tell me why my setup was horrible, why I was an idiot, and why I was just a tryhard because I wanted to point the speakers for my subwoofers towards the back of the car. Now, some people build their car audio setups for competitions. Some people build their car audio setups to impress other people. I have my car stereo set up to make me happy while driving and listening to the music that I enjoy. Now, the music I enjoy is not necessarily music everyone else enjoys. In fact, you've heard some of it right here on this channel, which is why it's kind of a shock to me to have to explain that I might want a different setup than other people prefer. Now, obviously, I don't have any of the equipment in the car right now because I'm in the car. I don't have the subwoofers. I don't have the battery. I don't have my amplifiers. All of it is out of the car. And in fact, I had to take it all out to diagnose a leak in my trunk. You see, I had to leave my car outside because my electrician said he was going to start working on my garage, and it ended up being a rainstorm. Now, did he actually show up and work on my garage? No. So my car took in a whole bunch of water for no reason whatsoever. It smells bad in here, and there was a pool of water in my trunk. So all of my car stereo stuff had to come out, and I figured this would be a great opportunity to do some upgrades. Let me pick up the camera. I'll show you the setup that I had, what I'm replacing, and what we're going to be doing going forward. Now, the story of my car stereo goes all the way back to about the year 2004, when I spent a student loan check to build my first car stereo. And it was money well spent because, well, I was getting an art degree, so probably could not have spent it anywhere better. No, not at all. So starting up front here with the head unit that I had back in the day is long gone. What we have now is a factory Acura CD player. Now, I put that in just recently because I wanted to get a radio that worked. You see, at some point, I decided that I wanted to mount my head unit in the trunk, so I got a basic factory head unit, and it turns out it didn't even work. But at the time, I didn't care, but now I care. I want this to work. We'll circle back to that in a second. Let's go take a look at the head unit that I have now. It is back here in the trunk. You can see it is mounted up here next to my capacitor, distribution block, and a complete mess of wires. It has a USB in and also a 3.5mm auxiliary port. I was using the USB to charge a Bluetooth receiver that went out into the 3.5mm auxiliary. And that was working pretty well for a while. However, first of all, the wire went bad, and it sounded pretty terrible. But also, nobody knew how to use it. I was the only one that could use it, and it required me fiddling around with my hand inside the dashboard in order to get my phone to connect. And it was actually kind of annoying. So, good riddance to that. Now, that head unit went out to a pair of amplifiers that are currently sitting in my other Prelude right now, and they are a pair of Rockford Fosgates. I've got one 4-channel, and I believe the other one is a 1-channel subwoofer amp. The 4-channel amp obviously powers the component speakers. The component speakers are by MB Court. I do not have the label on the tweeters, but we have a component speaker in the door and then a tweeter mounted here. There is a crossover mounted inside the door. They're smaller than that, but that is also a pair of crossovers for the rear. The rear, I had the crossovers kind of tucked away behind the panel there, behind the seat. And you see we've got rear speakers, kind of the same setup with the speaker separate from the tweeters. The subwoofers are down here in my shed. They are Kicker CVRs 10 inches. I had them wired up 4 ohms so that I could get a really good bass drum kick. Because I listen to a lot of heavy metal. It's not what a lot of people listen to when they're in cars. So I wanted a crisp punch, which is why I had them wired up 4 ohms and pointed towards the back of the car. Because when they were pointed towards the back of the car, the sound would reflect and it would resonate with the entire trunk and essentially turn the trunk into a giant ported speaker box. Go ahead and disagree with me. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think about that, because apparently I am an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a guy that has a pair of ears that likes listening to music, and I found a setup that I enjoy. Now, I don't know why that's such a problem to some people, but leave a comment. Tell me what you think about that. So now that this is all out of the car, mostly, what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to start over with the wiring. Entirely start over. I just did not have a lot of skills or very good tools back in the day when I started installing all this stuff. So we've got a lot of really crappy connections here. So that is all coming out. Now, aside from the wiring, we've also got a wood panel here that everything sat on. So the battery, the subwoofers, the amplifiers all sat on a piece of plywood, and that plywood, well, it's just worn out. It's starting to bow, and we need to replace that plywood. And I figured if I have to replace that plywood, why don't I build something a little bit better? So we have this chasm of space where the original spare tire once sat. We can make use of this. I want to build a box that sits in this cavity that has a piece of plexiglass over the top of it. That box will hold our amplifiers, and it's also going to hold our new equipment. Let's go into the car and I'll show you that new equipment. So first of all, please excuse the mess. This is an active project after all. Now, when I was shopping for new car audio setups, I was trying to find pretty much the best that I could in terms of Apple CarPlay. There's plenty of Apple CarPlay head units. There's a really good double-din space for it right there. But then I started to think, I kind of don't want a screen mounted in my dashboard. Now, there's just something about having an 80s car with no screens, without having to wear my fucking glasses every time I get in the car, without having, light being blasted in my face from a car stereo that I can't turn off. It's a problem in the Miata. It's a problem in the ID4. I just hate having screens while I'm driving. I'm getting old. And, another thing is I met someone at the Donut Media event that I was talking about putting a screen in the car, and she was like, oh no, don't do that, that'll ruin it. And I just thought, you know what, she's kind of right. I really, there's a certain level of charm here that looking at this and seeing, oh, it's a CD player, oh, that's so 90s. There's something special about that, and I want to preserve that. But I also want to be able to listen to music from my phone. And I also want things like maps to work. I also want to be able to send text messages and stuff like that. So I thought, instead of getting an Apple CarPlay head unit, I just cut out the head unit entirely. So this right here is a digital signal processor. And we've got some things in this bag to connect my phone directly to this digital signal processor and then into my stereo system. Now, I know that seems kind of crazy, and well, it's because it is. People don't do this. But that's exactly why I want to do it. This is going to be a lot of fun. I don't know exactly how I'm going to wire this up, but I want both the factory head unit and this new setup to both work on this stereo. And I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So the next thing I want to do today is remove the rest of this stuff. I want to take out this head unit. I'm probably going to leave the capacitor, but I want to take the wires out of the distribution block because I want to find a better way of wiring them. I may replace the distribution block because I lost a little cap for it a long time ago, and it just doesn't seem very safe to me just having it all exposed like that. I'm also going to leave the trunk relay here, although I need to get a nut for the back of that bolt because it's just going to rattle there. And we're going to remove all of the grounds and start over. You know, sometimes it really helps to look at things from a different perspective. And in this case, this shows me just how much space that I have for this second shelf. Walk up to this car and then I'll show you with a big dramatic reveal. Oh, look at that. Would you look at that? This is so good and it fits so perfectly. It actually, I think, might fit a little bit too perfectly because once I get the carpet on, it's going to add, you know, an eighth or 1/16 of an inch here and there. So I am going to have to be pretty liberal with my sanding. But, wow! This is so good. The bottom shelf here fits really nicely. There's a couple of finishing nails I need to pull out, but overall, this is great. And that section that I cut out here, I'm thinking I can build that little lip that I was talking about right around the edge here, and I actually can just put that piece of wood right back in so that when we're not servicing it, we have the speakers on top of it. Only thing I have to figure out is where's the battery going to go, because the battery used to sit right here. I'm going to have to turn it or something and move it over here. I don't think that's a real problem. I do have a lot of space here, but I don't have a lot of space up above it because of the strut bar. I could move it over here, but I am more likely just going to turn it and put it over here. So we're here on Monday morning. I'm taking a quick break between meetings to give you a quick update here. I wasn't able to record content all weekend because my electrician was here working in the garage. Now, that's kind of a problem because when he's here, I can't really get work done. But when Monday comes around and I have to do my job, I can't work here either. But I was able to make a little bit of progress on it over the weekend because most of the stereo work I can actually do right here outside, and the weather has been really nice. And also, a lot of this new work I was actually able to do out of my new shed that is not quite done either. Let's go take a quick look at this shed. The shed here, we've got a bunch of Prelude parts. I don't want to disturb whatever that creature was on the wall over there, but we've got basically the entire interior of the Prelude taken out, and I'm going to steam clean that, and we're going to do that a little bit later on. But here in the Prelude, I have managed to mount the battery tray. The next thing that I'm working on is the main fuse for the capacitor, and I think I'm going to put it somewhere around there. It's not the most comfortable position to install the fuse because when you put the fuse in, you have to use a light to charge up the capacitor. But the problem that I'm having is over here, there's a lot of other wires, and I don't want things to interfere with other things because that could cause problems and just generally make my life more difficult. So I'm still putting a lot of thought into that. The subwoofers are going to stay here-ish. I haven't exactly positioned them, but they are going to be close to the back of the trunk here, not only because I think it sounds better, but also because it enrages people, and that is exactly why I need to keep it. So after sitting out baking in the sun all day, I brought my car back in and we're going to get going on the wiring. And I gotta say something. If you guys know how I can get a hold of the idiot that did this, oh wait, never mind. The idiot that did this is holding the camera and talking to you right now. My God, this is bad. It gets worse, by the way. It gets worse. Let's just pull this off right here. Let's pull this off right now. Ready for it? Oh my Jesus. What happened here? It's like untangling dreadlocks. This is crazy. It's just, you know, I'm tempted to just cut it off and throw it out, but there's so much good wire in here. It looks like some dumbass kid did this in a parking lot of a Kmart. And that's because that's exactly where I did this. I've completely given up on using this old Clifford. I'm sure there's a newer unit that is smaller that can do what I need it to do. Really, I'm only using this for keyless entry anyway. All of this other crap was for like motion sensors and backup batteries and sirens that I'm just not using. And so I'm sure there's a better solution in 2024 than this thing. They don't last very long anyway, these aftermarket alarm units. So I went to AutoZone to get a replacement ignition switch, and this is what they sent me. Let's plug this in. There's a problem here. You see, while it does technically reach the ignition switch, it is really short. In fact, it crosses over the fuse box. And that's a problem, especially if I need to replace a fuse. This is way short. The original harness wraps all the way around the bottom of the column, joins with the other harness and comes back up underneath the steering column. So the fact that this is really short just tells me that it's some weird bullshit cost-cutting measure, and it's typical AutoZone shit. Get in the zone. AutoZone. So instead of using this garbage, I decided to repair the harness that was already in my car. So this one was plenty long. It was the original length, as you could see. I managed to de-pin the harness. It was a little bit of a pain, but once I got the hang of it, it actually got a lot easier. And then these extra wires are actually for the door cylinders, the door lock cylinders. This was part of the aftermarket alarm system. I went ahead and just removed it for now because I don't have a mechanism to trigger it yet. But that is a different project for a different day. For now, I'm just going to stick with manual locks, and we'll revisit that when the time comes. And so since we're tabling the alarm system for now, we can move forward with our stereo project, which means we're almost done doing things on the inside of the car. Yeah, I still have this switch left to run, but all of the wires are run, so we can clean up the interior and put it back together. There's one last thing I need to do before I do that, and that is to sort out the main power line. So I'm looking for places to run the main power cable that don't involve going through the fender. And I found a grommet back here next to this steering shaft. I'm not exactly sure what that's for, but it is definitely an aftermarket grommet that I've put in. So I wanted to do a quick test run of the wire, so I ran it through the firewall. I also found a grommet that fits, and it will go through here. Now we got to pull that wire, wrap it in conduit, wrap it in tape, so that we can protect it not only from abrasions and the elements, but also to help contain the EM current that's running through there, because you get a big, really loud whine when you have power like that running really close to speaker wire. So I cut the conduit for my main power cable, and well, the conduit's black, so I thought, well, I have some red tape. Why don't I wrap it in red? And then I wrapped most of it and started to look back and think, my God, this looks goofy. So throughout the week, I have been spending some time here and there getting this all wired up. First thing I want to do was to run all of the wires and make sure that they were the correct length. I also wrapped everything in conduit, including the power wires, so not only does it look nice, but it's protecting the wire. I still need to wrap this in blue, but we're going to take this out eventually anyway, and I can wrap it out at that time. So I got everything wired up as good as I have it. This is subject to change, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So I have my AV switch here. So the idea is that this is the iPhone input, this is the stock radio input. This is the thing that normalizes the output of the stock radio into the AV switch, and then this all goes out into my signal processor. I've got the left and right splitting off into front and rear, and the rear splits off into rear and subwoofer. Again, this may change, but for the purpose of testing, we actually have a lot to go off of. First thing we need to do is connect the battery. We're going to charge up the capacitor using this dome light. And so you just touch the dome light from the fuse to the receiving end of the fuse block. And you do that until the light goes out. We've also got a readout on the capacitor to tell you how many volts it has stored in it. Now we've got the breaker to the stereo system. Let's go ahead and flip that on. All right. Now let's go up to the front of the car, plug in the factory head unit, and then we can start this car up. Or we're not going to start it up, we're just going to turn it on. All right, the head unit is off. The phone is playing a video. Let's turn the car on. Okay. I heard the radio. That's not good. That's not great. Maybe the AV switch was switched over to have the radio on? Gets in the way. Yes! And I don't have a solution for that. So I hear myself now. But, now, we should not hear anything when we turn the car stereo on. That's a problem. So I believe my AV switch is not AV switching. B seems to be running all the time, and the switch is only toggling A on and off. That's stupid. I got to rethink this because I can't have that happening. If you have an active signal going back to your device that is off, that could be disastrous. The point of this whole setup was to have a switch that physically disconnects one input and switches to the other input. And this doesn't do that. So I'm going to have to do it myself. So I'm familiar with how you build your own switch, but that's going to be something that we do in a later video. I really want to get this car back on the road. And also, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal to do later on because this module is very easily accessible. And to have only the iPhone input run, it's actually going to be very easy. So we do need to cinch everything down. That is going to be the next thing that we do. I also want to have a battery cutoff switch going to the front of the car. I have one, I just have to cut it in somewhere along this line. Probably want it accessible from inside the car. So in the doors, I want to run new speaker wire. I'm going to run this one. Now we have this wire which runs to the lock solenoids. This is, ironically enough, speaker wire running to a lock solenoid, but whatever. It was coming out here and then going into the grommet here. The stereo installer that had done this 15, 20 years ago just kind of ran it from here and cut into the grommet that the factory wiring goes into and just kind of snuck it in there. That really sucks because water gets in there and it also interferes with the seal of the door. I don't like that. So initially I had drilled this out a little bit to run the wire, but seeing that it's actively messing up the seal of the door, I don't like that anymore. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do about it. So what I really need to do is come in over here, either in the factory harness or next to the factory harness, and then come into the door back here, which is going to mean taking the fender off. You see that? That's what doing it right looks like. It is possible to add those two wires into the factory grommets and sleeve there. So now that I know it's possible, we can go to the other side and I'll show you how. So most of the work that you do is going to be on the outside of the car. However, you still need to take the door panel off, and there is a couple of clips that you need to undo. You see that right there. You need to undo that one and that one. This allows you to pull out a section of the wiring harness a little bit further. You need that slack on the other side of the door. So we're going to go ahead and pop these out. Next up, we have to pull out the factory grommets here and here. And it can be a little bit tricky, but sometimes it isn't. That one came out easy. And this one, since the idiot at the stereo shop already cut it, can kind of pull it out in halves. So we pull this out. So once you pull this out, you're going to notice here that there's some electrical tape. This sleeve actually just slips in underneath this grommet. So you pull apart the tape and you can feed in the wire that goes into the car from underneath the grommet here. And then the wire that goes into the door, you can feed in through the sleeve here. I'm going to start taking this apart and I'll check in with you when it's time to run the wire. So here's what I did. Obviously, I wrapped a length of this in electrical tape. And that was because I needed these two wires to be rigid enough to push through this plastic sleeve. And that alone wasn't enough to get it through. You see here I have some synthetic axle grease. It's not Mercedes-Benz sunroof grease, but hey, you know, it does the job all the same. If you have Mercedes-Benz sunroof grease, obviously you use Mercedes-Benz sunroof grease for everything. If there's anything we've learned from legit street cars, it's that. And so from there, all I had to do was just push this through. It gets pretty hard when you're going through a bend here, so that's why you saw me trying to straighten it out as much as I could, but little by little, I got it entirely through. So now that it's through, I can probably pull more of it through so that I can start undoing some of this electrical tape. I probably won't remove all of the electrical tape, just enough to make a connection on the inside of the door. It's all really straightforward from here. What I have to do now is run the other side of this through this grommet. That's actually pretty easy to do. Don't even need Mercedes-Benz sunroof grease. We're gonna just run it through here and then into the car, and it's done from there. Once that's all done, we wrap this all up with tape, and we're good to go. I rewired everything inside this door, and it is ready to go back together. I just use waterproof butt connectors to reconnect the speaker wire and the, well, other speaker wire. And then I wrapped this all with conduit and tape, put everything back together. That's all wired up nicely, the crossover. I trimmed down this wire and just cleaned it up a little bit. So this is going back together. I still haven't reconnected the wire underneath the dash, but that is a different problem for a different time. I want to get these door panels sorted before I get back inside the car. I ran the main power cable back through the fender, kind of like how it was before, except much better. You see, I drilled a hole and put in a grommet. That hole, I don't feel warm and fuzzy about it, but I feel like I was cutting a little too far into the frame. I wish I had placed it a little bit better, but I think it's going to be just fine where it's at. Using the grommet will help ensure that water doesn't get in. I'm also going to wrap more tape around it. I'm going to try to get tape around, you know, where the wire goes in. But having everything wrapped up like that, I feel so much better about it. I feel like it's gonna stand up to the elements a lot better, and we don't have a crazy weird 90-degree turn inside the engine compartment. So this is just a much better place to run it. The last thing I did here was run the control knobs for the volume and for the subwoofer. I ran them up to the right of the center console here. I'm going to mount them somewhere with some sticky backer. I don't want to screw them in anywhere because, you know, things keep changing in this car. So I don't want to drill a hole in the dashboard and regret it. So I laid carpet on the support platform, but I made a huge mistake. I didn't include the cover piece. You see, if I had put the cover piece into the platform, I could have rolled carpet over this whole thing and then cut out the square and had a carpeted centerpiece. But no big deal. This is a very easy thing to fix. I just need to buy more carpet. I can't just use that square because the ends are all frayed from the cut and it's not quite, there's not quite enough coverage just because some of it had wrapped underneath the carpet. And I may need to do a little bit more spraying along the edges here, but really this looks awesome. What doesn't look awesome is these corners off to the sides on either side. See, my old plywood platform had the original carpet mounted to it, and obviously I don't have the original carpet mounted to it. And Honda did something really weird where they just had the carpet just kind of laying around. And I don't want to do that. I want something a little bit more solid, which means I'm going to need to design little inserts, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, but that's not a problem that I'm going to solve today. And so with the battery, I cut in the switch to the front of the car. It's going to mount to the platform. And then I have the fuse that needs to go here. I'm going to get self-tapping screws for that. I'm sure I have some laying around. I used the Freiberger technique to kind of organize those cables. They're really big and thick, so I wanted to get them kind of cooperating with each other because they were just kind of going wherever the hell they wanted. I may do the same thing over here, but we'll do that later. The next thing I need to do in the trunk is put in the side panels, and if I put in the paneling, I need to clean it first. So we're going to get our steam cleaner set up and clean some panels. Done. Once this all dries off, we can start putting it in the car. Once my back stops hurting, we can put the trunk paneling in. That's going to be really cool. I'm excited for that. So I got the trunk put back together and everything is mounted up. This was no small feat. Almost everything I did needed adjustments. You see, I still have a bit of a mess of wiring here. I'm going to resolve that later. But the amplifiers and the signal processor are all mounted down. The breaker is mounted down. The fuse is mounted. And I have my main battery switch over there going to the front of the car. In getting this all together, one of the difficulties I had with the side panels was the crossovers. They were mounted too far out. I had to pull them off and mount them back in farther in. And then I had kind of a ordeal with the wires here. This is, you can see it's still a little fat, and I had to cut 2 little holes here because without these holes, these wires were impossible to feed through into the wood box down below. The ground wire has a bunch of corrosion in it. I trimmed a little bit back, but it still has some corrosion. I'm just gonna have to replace the whole ground wire. For now, it's better than nothing, better than no ground wire, but I should definitely replace that because it's gonna affect the way the car runs. The fuse mounted back here is kind of a pain in the ass, but I just charged it, so it is possible. It's just not very much fun. So going back to the stereo tuning, I learned from the internet that you want to know the input sensitivity to these amplifiers. They're both 4 volts. So I ideally actually want the gain down to 1 and then have the signal processor put out 3 volts, 4 volts, almost as much as they can handle, and then the volume will take care of the rest from there. I definitely want to have the gain down on the amplifiers and control it on the signal processor. I just don't know how high I want to turn it because I don't want to blow up my ears. But I am aware, so don't leave, well, go ahead and leave comments, but leave comments if you have any other helpful information. Speaking of leaving comments with helpful information, let's take a look at my carpet. So I did a full steam shampoo and rinse of the carpet, and it came out, well, night and day better. This is you cannot argue that this is an improvement. Is it perfect? No. There's still spots here and there, and I could probably go at this for a good year, but given the age of this carpet, I don't think I want to push my luck any further. It's really wearing down in some places, and I'm just gonna keep making it worse the more I go at it. So this is really good. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the car, and we're gonna move forward with this install. This is going really well. I'm very, very happy with the results so far. I've been cleaning everything up on the inside, and I just wanted to give you a quick tour before I put the carpet in. So I've got all of the conduits tied off and run into places where I think they're gonna be out of the way. This is gonna have to get knocked over a little bit. Everything's run up here. Over there, we got the big fat cable running where it was before, except in just a much better place going out the car. Everything else is running. You see it kind of coalesces off to the right of the shifter and then comes up. This is the best I've ever done. Could it be better? Yeah, probably. But this is still the best I've ever done. Once I get the carpet in, there's obviously a lot left pending in the middle of the dash. Switches, buttons, and all of this stuff. I also have to find a place for my trunk popper. I have no idea where I'm going to put that. I'm just going to figure that out after I get the carpet in, I guess. And so as another week rolls on, I have been chipping away at this car a little bit at a time, before and after work, mostly after. Inside the trunk, we've actually got the stereo mostly done. I've got the thing tuned to a good enough liking. Now, here's the thing. I realized when I was tuning the stereo that I don't have a whole lot of control over the levels. And so I really am just kind of listening to it the way the artist intended to listen to it. But if you really want to be a tryhard, we gotta have a proper equalizer. So maybe this is going to be another level of tryhard. Maybe this is going to mean that I come back to this project later on with a proper digital signal processor. I know I've been calling my line output converter a digital signal processor. I know I was calling it the wrong thing. There is a difference, and I have a line output converter. So go ahead, leave comments in the chat, tell me I'm an idiot for getting it wrong. I pulled the Prelude out of the garage, and first things first, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be without mirrors. I really need my mirrors back on. But while the glue is drying, there's some things we can do. And I just wanted to take a quick walk around of the stereo and the interior. So if I were to do this all over again, I probably would have done a mock-up of the entire trunk panel in cardboard and just kind of completely ignored the factory shape, because I don't want to just drape carpet over the sides here. I want to make something that fits in here. So that's going to be in the future. Also, I wanted to paint this, but I don't have time. I don't have time. I need to get this car on the road. I really like how the wires look. I know it's kind of like not an efficient use of space, but I think it looks pretty cool. I got them tied up all nice. And on the inside of the car, after we've cleaned it and done some other work to it, okay, we got a mess of screws here, but just look at the upholstery. Would you just look at that? Now, isn't that something? All right, so now that the car's back together and it is running right, as we saw in the last video, let's go for a drive and see how the music sounds. So I have on my phone music video loaded up from my friend's band Desecrate. You've heard them on this channel countless times. It is one of the few things that I can play without getting copyright stricken, so we're gonna play that. Now, for tuning the stereo, I use other bands, and I've already listened to a lot of things, but I'm just gonna get it started and we will talk about it from there. So I gotta turn on the switch to turn on the amplifiers, and now we're gonna begin the video. So the first thing is that I don't have a volume knob yet. That's kind of annoying, and I'd really like to fix that. The volume knob that I got, for some reason, I don't know why it doesn't work correctly, but that's a later stage. The other thing I noticed, really feeling that I need this equalizer because I can't tune the individual levels of the speakers. There's a little bit that I can get out of adjusting the crossovers and from the amplifiers, but it's not good enough. If we're going to be try-hard, we got to try hard. The other thing I noticed that we're not going to be able to hear very well because I'm talking to you is the subwoofer adjustment. I need to up the gain on the subwoofer just a little bit because I'm not getting enough adjustability out of this knob. I thought it was pretty good, but I was sitting in the garage, and when you're sitting in the garage, you know, the music isn't going to be as it's a whole different experience when you're actually driving. And lastly, all of the work that we did in the interior is it's freaking magical, guys. Like, I'm so glad I took it all out, cleaned it up really nice. This car's a very nice place to be now. So the sun is out, the weather's really nice. We're gonna go over to our photo shoot spot and show you what this car has become of all of the work that we have put into it over the last 2 months. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And if you don't like what you see, maybe you think I'm just a tryhard, leave a comment because I want to hear from you. If you are a car audio person and you have some helpful advice, maybe you have some equipment recommendations, leave a comment because I really want to hear from you. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.